Funded by the Community Radio Fund of Canada.
Hello, and welcome. This is our four-part podcast series featuring the Homalco First Nations and our sister nations from Vancouver Island and the surrounding coastal areas. I am Eric Wilson from the Homalco Reservation. Today I'm joined by Darren Blaney, Rob Harry, and Bill Blaney. So this is episode 2. We're going to be exploring the European contact and its impact. It's an examination of the arrival of Europeans, their influence on local First Nations peoples, and the resulting cultural, social, and economic shifts. So let's get in with question number 1. So what do Homalco oral histories say about the first encounters with European traders or missionaries?
I can start with that one. I was in Victoria about 15 years ago, went to the museum, and they had a bunch of art and documents on first contact, especially with Homalco. They had come with their ship, and there were some people on the ship from different tribes further north from ours. And one of the Homalco members was coming from church from Butte Inlet in his canoe, and they waved him down and stopped him. And they asked the what do you call it, Europeans, I guess a good word, to show them Butte Inlet, where to go, what not to do, and refused to do it. He said, "I'm not showing you up there. I don't want you up there, so I'm not going to show you." He took off in his canoe. That's the first contact I heard of ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's actually in the archives in Victoria.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll have to look that up.
I think some of the stories that we heard, one was from one story that I heard from when the Europeans first landed in Comox, I think, and it was quite the sight. I guess a lot of our people had never seen a ship before, and it was quite frightening to them. They said my wife's mother was telling me that said when they dropped the chains off to anchor, said all the people there in Comox went and head away. They got scared. So that was one of the first. Another one was in where the lookout is that's where our people were called. They called our people friendly Indians. I think that's in our books. So that was one contact the Europeans had. And it was quite the excitement from our people to see large ships like that. They called it tall ships anyway. So that was one was that they guided them through Aaron Rapids to go through, and they were saying that I guess the contact was because they didn't know how to speak English or anything. That was kind of almost kind of But they got through without, they got the ship through. And they guided the ship through Erin Rapids. I guess it was in some low tide or something. But it was kind of a calm and the rapids weren't that strong. I think it was ebb tide or something. So there's still some more I'll probably still think about yet before this interview's over.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for me was the first round of smallpox came through in about 1780, about 12 years before the Spaniards. First contact with Europeans was with the Spaniards in 1792. And that was, to me, the smallpox came north from Mexico, from the Spaniards down in Mexico, and it kept coming north until it reached us in 1780. And that was because of our trade routes. And I think our trade routes were, if you take a look at the archaeological site in Bear Bay, they found artifacts in there that are over 10,000 years. And some of those artifacts are like a little arrowhead that came from eastern Oregon. And that's going back 10,000 years. So we've had trade routes for over 10,000 years. So our people had an economy way back then. And I think when I have meetings with some of the government people, I say Homalco had opportunities for an economy over 10,000 years ago. But after the reserves went in, our people got restricted in developing an economy. I think when our people, all the hand loggers that we had, they started taking them away and giving them to the logging companies from the early 1900s. Then after that was the fishing. We lost all of our fishing economy because they took all the licenses away. Then while I was away in residential school, my uncle told me about there was a rich guy from California that wanted to build a resort in Stewart Island. Spent about $300,000 of his own money to build us a resort for Homalco. But you got to remember that in 1951, they had the end isolation policy that was going to eventually relocate us to Sliammon. And if we had a resort, that would go against, it would keep us from moving over to Sliammon. And then I think with all the economic marginalization our people went through, we didn't really have an economy. And you take a look at the logging after that, our people were asking for logging further up Butte Inlet, up in Homalco. Our people wanted our own ability to log up there, and they denied us that. And then, after they took all the, after they took away all the what do you call that? Those our logging, the hand logging. When they took that away, our people switched over to deer. They started selling deer to the logging camps. And the Indian agent would only allow our people to sell 3 deer to the logging camps. And our people were asking for the ability to sell 12 deer to the logging camp so they can have an economy. And all the different times our people been denied an economy. And so European contact has really just kept us in poverty. And, you look at all the regulations that were in place from the government that prevented us from developing an economy for ourselves. I think our people really got set back. And so when I look at our people that went through residential schools, all those traumas from residential school, and then you have all the drinking problems, the drug problems, our people weren't allowed to have their potential. They couldn't develop. We couldn't develop ourselves as a nation. So our economy was so suppressed that we really didn't have anything. You know, when our people went off logging, I remember Jimmy Wilson telling me, he said, Homalco people were the best loggers. He said that they were all up the coast, like you mentioned. Robert's brother Stephen, high riggers, they were the best on the coast. Johnny Wilson, best on the coast. There were so many people that were really good loggers. When they got in there, they more than proved themselves to be the best. And then he said at some point, what he called church house, when we were building our own buildings, he said in all the music that was coming out there, he called it a renaissance in church house because there was so much, all that potential when people would come to our Christmas celebration, New Year's celebration. All people seen us as doing really well. And then there was that kind of smothering of that flame that kind of came about. So I think our people right now, I'd say we're still here. You know, from 87 people, we're still here, and we're going to do even better now. We're going to do way better. So grateful for that.
For sure. So am I.
Where did you find that midden and that musket bullet?
That was in Bear Bay.
Bear Bay.
Yeah.
The middens are the chief mentioned already. It's estimated at 10,000 years old.
Wow.
And there's in the one of the trees. I think your son found it, right, Kai?
Yeah.
Found a musket bullet buried into the.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So just to go back a little bit further than that, as you can understand that Homalco has been pushed around quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We've been marginalized, ignored, kicked out, everything taken away from us, all because of, European influence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the people that were in government, none of them were native. None of them. They're all from Europe or France or Spain or wherever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They're the one that suppressed us to a point where we almost lost back down to 87.
Wow.
Now we're up here at 500. And but we have a lot of relatives outside our main community, like in Sliman, Vancouver, Comox, maybe. So they're members that have transferred there.
Yeah.
And now we're getting the a vibe that they all want to come back, or most of them want to come back. So that's going to happen soon too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Darren, you were saying smallpox hit us around 1780.
Yep.
How did that impact our people, our community?
Well, the first round of smallpox came up in 1780 from south, and then Homalco people it arrived in the winter. Mm-hmm. And by then we had our reserves, so we weren't allowed to leave. So our people, it died that the smallpox quit spreading when it hit Homalco, so that as far north as it went, because we were all in our villages in the winter months. Mm-hmm. Then again in 1835 came again. And then in 1865 it came again, the last time it came. And that's when we went down to 87 people. And I kind of do the math backwards, 90% each time. And that sort of comes down to is we went from 87 back to about 10,000 people.
Wow.
So, and I think that's why the cultural guidelines we had when family leaders met and said, you know, you have 10,000 people in the territory, you have to really spread out your impact to look after the environment a lot more. So I think that's what happened with us, is that we had our social structures were a lot stronger way back when smallpox first arrived, because you take a look at all the islands my uncles told me about, there's all kinds of burials on the islands each round of smallpox. They would put them in the islands, Rendezvous Islands, the Potato Point in Homalco, and then across from Orford, across from there where the dock is, there's burial boxes up in the cliffs up there. So they tried to place them away from the community in order to try to protect the community from smallpox. So it was had a pretty big impact on us. And that's why when you take a look at the Lakewood talk coming down, they talk about conquering the area, and it was what was said by Bob Gelwas was just a raid, because it was empty. We weren't using up our territory so much anymore. That's why Campbell River was available, because our people had died off to about 87. So it wasn't that they came in and ran us off. It was just, we've always been here. We've always been using all of our clam gardens and everything. And the 13 moons continued, but it was getting harder when our what I could see is when our gill knitters were taken away. I take a look at Chameleon Harbor, just in Sonora. There was a big, huge beaches that were clam gardens, and my uncle and I and a few of us from Homalco went there, and it was all compacted. So there was only about maybe 2 or 3 inches that was okay for clams, but because we hadn't used it in so long, it just kind of compacted, and the clams weren't as plentiful there. So my uncle said we needed those pitchforks and go in there and till the ground again to bring that clam garden back. So I think that was directly related to the loss of our gill knitters, because it's from Church House, it's way around the other side of Stewart Island towards Johnson Strait. So that part of it, we couldn't really use the territory. Our reach wasn't as much because our populations were so small and our impacts were small. So we kind of stayed closer to home, I guess, with our smaller boats.
I see. So with Old Church House being blown away by Huoch, so how did the establishment of Church House shape Homalco community life?
I couldn't hear.
Oh, he's asking about Old Church House when it was blown away by the north wind, whoa.
Yeah,
And then how did going to Church House
yeah.
affect us?
I got that they when the rates were, I guess it's almost, there was only a few raids coming through from the northern tribes. So Old Church House was the first place that our people picked to start today we call it a reserve, but actually it's a place where they picked to start a community. So it was quite in those days, the north wind butte, there was quite a strong force. It's like almost a gale force they built a church there, an old church house, and they built 4 houses according to the stories we heard. It was all blown down by this force wind from the butte wind. It was pretty strong. So naturally, our elders were saying that it was never meant to be. So they That's how come they moved to Church House, for a more sheltered place. And so Church House started out as a, but Ambrose was still telling us it took a long time to clear land there. So it took about 20 years before people were all settled in Church House.
I see.
And that was quite the hard work, because at those days they didn't have excavators or
Yeah, no heavy equipment, right?
nothing of that sort. So that all everything was done by hand, and there were lots of burning of wood and stumps and everything, trees. So that's why it took a long time to really make a settlement in Church House. It wasn't, it was slowly building up through the years.
Cool.
So it took about 20 years before people were all moved back in.
Great. What role did missionaries and residential schools play in shaping culture?
A lot of things changed when the Catholic Church came into the reserves, and I remember a lot of people kind of turned to religion because of there was some I don't know what you can call it today, like a witch doctor. There were a lot of unnecessary killings. So when the Catholic Church came, it became, our people became big believers in God, and it took a long time for our people to believe in God, because they didn't know what God was. And I think what happened in residential school was a big change of life for our people, because of we were sent to residential school we couldn't speak our language, we couldn't we were learned to really got to do a lot of things that we didn't know. A lot of our people never spoke a word of English before they entered a residential school. So naturally, that really changed a lot of our history, our culture, our beliefs.
Yeah.
So when we were in school, and there was always trouble, because there were so many boys on one side and girls on the other side. So it became hard to our people to believe in God with all the things they went through in residential school, because of what they did was that's why a lot of our people had a hell of a time believing in education, because it was the Catholic Church that really kind of they were doing prayers in the morning, prayers in the lunchtime, prayers before meals. So they were really kind of brainwashed to have faith and so naturally a lot of our people lost their language, lost their culture, and it was we're just talking about a lot of our people in church house never spoke hardly English. There was only a few people.
Mm-hmm.
So when our kids went to school in Seashell, and then when they came home and they were speaking English, that's how the parents got to learn to speak English. And it was quite a big change I remember some of the people that worked in logging camp, they didn't know how to spell their own name because they didn't go to school.
Right.
So they had to write the X. So anyway, there's so much stories to recover.
There was this lady in Parliament named Leah Gazan was working on creating a law to making it illegal to deny residential schools, what happened in residential schools. And she said that they did a study on residential schools and found that the residential schools only educated our people to a grade 3 level. And I could see that. There was I was looking at a petition that was done in Church House, and it was like a petition on education. And my grandmother was one of the ones that knew how to write. The only other one that knew how to write at that time was Chief Solomon Harry and my grandmother. And that petition was talking about education. And when I was chief in early 2000, we did a study on the literacy level in our community. Our literacy level was grade 6. So we didn't move much beyond the grade 3 level. So that really impacts our people's employability, our people to be able to start to develop their potential. So residential schools set us back in that way. And then the people that were in residential schools were malnourished. There were some studies, they were doing kind of like they were experimenting with First Nations kids by malnourishing them, what happens to their teeth. And when they were malnourished, they were more susceptible to, what's that disease that they got? There was a disease that went through anyway. After smallpox, there was another one. And you were much more susceptible to that. And I remember your dad, Jimmy Wilson, telling me about that there was a whole generation of Homalco people in around the 1930s that went to Seashell. And they got buried in Seashell. They all died from the disease, and there was only one that survived for a while, was Tommy Paul's son. Tommy Paul went to get his son from residential school and brought him home, and he only survived for a month.
Really?
And he died. So there was a whole generation of Homalco people. So when those unmarked remains are still being found, some of them are our people. And I think at some point we're going to have to get serious about finding the names of those people in the 30s or the late 20s that were in residential school that died in Seashell. I think, that disease is tuberculosis.
Yes.
Yeah, so that went through. And I think the impact of the residential schools was, like I look at all the people that I went to school with, they're gone. They didn't survive because when you suffer a trauma, your trauma, if you don't heal it, it attacks your body, whether it's cancer, all kinds of other serious mental illness, bad hearts and everything. And diabetes and stuff. It's our people don't get to be elders. So we have very few elders in our community because of and that elders is the knowledge, For me, I was lucky when I sobered up. I had elders supporting me in sobriety, but were giving me culture. And one of them was your dad and Ambrose, Tommy Hill, my uncle, and the one he was talking about, Outland, Adeline Francis, talking to them, Joe Mitchell, and these people, Joe Dave Paul, others that kind of gave me a little bit here and there, and my grandmother, my grandfather, with all the culture that was going on within our lives when I was growing up. There was always traditional, whatever, if it was fishing or it was hunting. He did all those things when I was growing up with him. But when I went to residential school, I didn't really know English. I was thinking about it this morning. I remember when I was in classroom, by then they'd send us out to the white schools. And I didn't know what this kid was calling me. He was calling me a mongoloid. And I didn't know what the word meant, but I knew it wasn't good. So I went up and fought him. Fought him because I thought he was trying to insult me.
Yeah.
But I think all those times where I stood up for myself prevented me from getting abused. I had a supervisor in Mission that was abusing friends around me. But because I spoke up, he left me alone, but the friends around me that got abused, they're gone now.
Yeah.
And I was lucky I could speak up for myself, but there was other older guys that looked after me. And Harvey Paul was one of them, my friend Arnold Peters, and Wilkie George from Duncan that looked after me, kept me from getting abused. So I was lucky. But it sure doesn't feel good when you see all the people around you and the supervisors that you had that were abusers. So I think when the residential schools were going on, there was, it was still there. When I got there, the food was terrible. They didn't feed you right, basically starved you. Whenever we went to school somewhere, we always went around the neighborhood of the school, raided fruit trees around the neighborhoods of the schools we went to. And so I think there's a lot of trauma there. And that's why we're working on a trauma center so that we can heal our people, give them back their potential and let them have a life. Because the ones that I see now that are affected by intergenerational trauma, we had all those young people that died from drug overdose. They didn't get to have a life. They were just a slave to the drugs and alcohol. That's kind of like when I left residential school, all I wanted to do was drink. That was nothing else on my mind. But I was lucky enough that I sobered up young and able to live this life that I have, and to be able to make a difference in the lives of our people today means a lot to me. But
Definitely.
Without that, I would just been buried a long time ago.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even though you graduated from high school, if you're in a residential school, there's no way you can get into college, no way you can get into university. I had my nephew found my diploma, and in the photo shot it, they showed it to me. I was actually graduating in grade 12 in 1968, but under the agriculture program. What does that mean? You try to plan to go to university, it's impossible.
Exactly.
It wasn't academic. And a lot of people got that same kind of letter that I got.
Yeah, and they kind of just get pushed through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's sad. That's sad.
I think when I look at it, our people built the church and the school in Homalco. That was to try to keep our kids home. So we didn't have to send them to residential school because we were already Catholics.
Yeah.
And they had the priests come up, but they took them away anyway. And I think when I used to talk to your dad he used to come talk to me a lot about bathing in the river. And he said you weren't allowed to talk about bathing in the river. And to me, that was, I think it's part of what the church didn't want us practicing our own religion. So they used to go up to the river before daylight, break in daylight, and get back home before that's what it looks like to me. And when I look at it, our people didn't really want to talk about it. And I was trying to keep it from the church as far as I can see. And our people, when we moved here, it was almost gone. It was almost lost. And I think your dad put a lot of time talking to people about it, trying to learn about it. He was talking to me about Johnny Wilson. And he was downtown in the skids in Vancouver, and he went to see him, got a bottle of whiskey, and he gave it to him. And he tried to talk to him about it, and Johnny just looked at him and said, means it's bad.
Oh.
So he thought your dad interpreted that could be means you can do good with it or you can do bad with it. And so I learned a lot from him, what he talked about. And then there's other people that just kind of, I think that's why the stories are a little bit different all over. I mean, I was given Clams a ride downtown one time, and Clam started talking about the one where when you're bathing in the water, when you're done, you wash away all your negativity and all your struggles. He said you scoop up water and you spit it out downriver 3 times. I never heard that before, just from Clams. So I'm sure we'll probably learn a lot more out there. And I figured if we're going to lose it, we need to talk about it. And we need to tell what we know about it. If we're going to be quiet about it, I can understand being humble about bathing in the river, because that's what you're supposed to be, is you're learning how to be humble.
Yeah.
But to be humble where we kill it is not right either. We have to talk about it. So that's why I talk about it to people, and doesn't really matter to me. And I think that was some resistance there. I think when I was in residential school, when you used to talk about when I come home, the elders would ask me, "Tochne what's Kwaitan?" And when I was in residential school, because of that, I used to sound out our language in my head, so I could keep it.
Great. Any other notable acts you guys could remember?
Notable acts of resistance to try to keep our culture, what our people did to try to keep our culture.
Yeah, I think when I was on chief for Homalco for a couple of years in Church House, there was a guy from downstates. He wanted to give the man $300,000 to start a resort in Old Church House. And we tried to ask permission through Indian Affairs. He said no. He said all Native people aren't allowed to have businesses. That was the answer. He said you can't run a business on reserve. And I don't know, it took a long time for that to overcome.
Yeah.
Because of one thing they were saying too, that we didn't have enough education, or or commitment to do business. So you weren't allowed to have a business on reserve.
Yes.
I think they're not only Homalco had that problem, but other bands had the same thing. Because I think it was kind of a law that the government had not to have people know too much about businesses.
I think when I think back on the specific claim we have in Orford, the Indian agent came out in 1960, and he had a BCR, Band Council resolution, and he brought it to a meeting in Church House. He had it all ready, but that time there was a chief and two councillors. That was Solomon and I think Walter was one of the
Walter and Peter Harry.
Peter Harry. There were Peter and Solomon were off fishing up in Rivers Inlet in the summer, and I think the Indian agent at that time there was a road right of way in Orford, and they had another one in Homalco, and they paid like $5,000 a year for that. And it was a 30-year lease. Well, the one in Homalco was a 30-year lease. And the one in Orford, they said that Homalco had to give up that road right of way, and they were going to sell it for $5,000. That's what the Indian agent told them. And if they didn't take the $5,000, they were just going to take the road right of way, take it away from us. So it's been a battle with us and the government for a while. There's a guy in Southgate that has, he's made a business out of buying properties where there's a mountain on one side and there's a river on the other. So if there's any logging that goes on, they have to cut through his land. And in Southgate, he was going to make $600,000 from us.
Really?
And here the government took that away from us in Orford, took that away from us in Homalco. So the government has really only economically marginalized us all different ways. I think when they took the fishing licenses away, that would have allowed us to stay in Church House. We had a job there. We could have stayed there. But they were taking away all of our economy every way they could. So that's why it's important for our young people to understand our history, because we're not in this place because we chose it. We're here because the government did all these things to keep us poor. And now we have a chance to start changing all that. And that's why we're pushing so hard for it now, is that our future generations will have a much different life.
What lessons have been passed down from elders about this era of upheaval?
When I was a kid, we used to set nets all around that bay in Church House.
Mm-hmm.
We used to set nets there because our people chose that spot because it was a good resource for salmon, cod, and everything in there. And my grandfather was always worried about the game warden coming in and cutting up our nets there, even though it was for our own use. And I think now we're pushing hard on our rights that we own our territory. We're the owners of that land. We've looked after that land for over 10,000 years. That's the lesson I take from this, is that we're the owners and we will eventually get our own laws in our territory. Our guardians will be looking after our lands. They'll be the experts in our lands, not DFO, not the province. It'll be our people will be the experts in there. And I think in time we'll get to that. And I remember a guy from DFO, Kent Spencer. He came, and they're always threatening us with if we don't kind of listen to them, they'll pull our funding. Probably only about 300,000 or 400,000. And I told him we're going to get that road right of way back in Orford that the engine agent took. And I said, we're looking at all different ways to raise money to rebuild our own salmon. I said, at some point, we will have our own money. And I said to him, when we do, we will do what we want. And I looked at him, and he was just kind of squirming away in his seat. And Kent just said, I don't know. He could only say, I don't know, because he can't. We own that territory. We will make our own laws there one day. We will look after our own. We will control all the resources in there. And through the hydro project, we're going to control the tax collection there. We'll do both federal and provincial tax. You know, the government right now takes all that taxes, but we will be the tax collectors because it's our land and our territory, our taxes. So we'll get there at some point. And once we do, the government will not be able to, like when we did the fish farm fight, it felt like the government was trying to steamroll us because they knew we didn't have a lot of money. But we went to court and we blocked them from putting fish farms in. And then they do all this legal, what our lawyer at the time called legal mischief, where they're just throwing motions on the table so we have to pay our lawyers to respond to each one. And at some point, we will run out of money and we'll quit fighting. But at some point, our band will have our own legal trust fund where we will be ready to go to court anytime, any day, where we can just take on the government. They will not be able to do that to us.
Yeah.
So we'll look after our territory and we'll look after our people. And at some point, you know, keep talking to our council. As long as we're poor, we do not control our own future. As long as we're writing proposals, we don't control our future. And the only way we're going to do that is taking control of our territory. And the land base we have right now is too small for us. You know, Homalco got on average 11 acres per person. Clahus and Tla'amin got on average just under 48 acres per person. So we only got about less than a quarter of what they got. And so our big challenge is to build up our land base. Your economic base is your land base, the size of your land. So we're going to be looking at buying up all kinds of land, so that will increase our land base. We got 392 acres around us to the highway, so we can put businesses in there. But we got other lands down here, and we'll just keep expanding our land base. And pretty soon, there's going to be nobody that's going to be able to challenge us. So we'll be solid. That's our goal. Yeah.
Awesome. I love to hear that.
I like to bring back. There's a lot of privileges our people didn't have when back in the, I think from the mid 40s to the early 50s, our people weren't allowed to go buy liquor in the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to beer parlor and drink in there, but you can't take any. So when that was happening, a lot of our people, once the government opened up the rights for our people to go buy liquor in liquor store, I think our people just lost control of how to handle liquor. And I think that was the big downfall that we had, was having that privilege taken away. And all of a sudden they knew they were going to, our people weren't going to handle the liquor, you know. It was pretty hard to see our people go downhill after that. It was quite quite sorrowful to see people go down the road and die from a liquor.
Yeah. Oh,
What do you
gosh.
think, Bob?
Didn't they also have an option to lose your status so they can buy booze?
Yeah.
That was another con thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Hackett did that.
I think my uncle did that too. Yeah. So they had you down and just beat you up.
That is not good. Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
Just thank you for doing this.
For
It's-
sure.
I think not only are you learning and people down there learning,
Oh, yeah.
I'm learning from these two guys too.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it makes me feel good
Generosity,
to
unity.
be proud of this
Definitely, yeah.
process. I'm proud of just being up here. Yeah.
Yeah, me as well. And thank you so much, guys, for being here.
Okay.
So this concludes our episode 2 of our 4-episode podcast series. And stay tuned for next time for episode 3, where we're going to be talking about the adaptation over the past century. And I am Eric Wilson from the Homalco First Nation. Thank you all for listening. Emot.
Emo.
Emotown.